Welcome to Papa Nick's Music. I am your host, Papa Nick Lewis, and today we're talking about perfect albums again. A couple of weeks ago, I released a video in which I defined, at least as I see it, what a perfect album is. A perfect album, I said, has four criteria. First, no skippers. You can't skip tracks when you're listening to it. Second, you can't think that of anything that would be done, that could be done, that would improve the quality of the album. Third, it has to be in some way superlative. In some way, it is better than other albums of its type. Whether that's genre, time period, works by that artist, whatever. It is a stellar example of whatever it is you're looking at. And then finally, a perfect album is an album that you would much rather listen to completely than listen to in bits and pieces. Once you start listening to the album, you really want to finish it. If you're uncomfortable if you can only listen to a bit of it, right? And I defined those characteristics in that last video by pointing out examples of albums that fell short in each of the four criteria. Today, I want to very quickly just give you 10 albums that do not fall short. These are my first 10 perfect albums that I want to talk about. I'm going to give you a little bit of warning here. Those of you who are watching this who are vinyl aficionados, I'm going to be showing you album covers, and some of these albums are in pretty rough shape. I'll just tell you right now. I am not a vinyl collector. I am not I don't think of my music collection as a collection. I think of it as a library. I'm trying to get listenable quality examples of music. I don't care what pressing it is. I don't care what format it is. Generally, I prefer CDs. They're easier to keep track of, and they play better. Yeah, don't even. So I'm not holding these up as examples of high quality vinyl pressings. Oh no, my friend. They're just placeholders for for the albums. So coming up first, I'm arranging these chronologically, and our first album is from 1969. I don't think anybody out there is going to argue when I say that I think Abbey Road by the Beatles is a perfect album. I love every song on here. So there are no skippers. I can't think of anything that could be done that would make it any better. It is superlative. The quality of the production, the quality of the songwriting, everything is head and shoulders above other albums that were released at the time. And I want to listen to the whole thing. I am not going to be comfortable if... Sorry, I'm rearranging my stuff on my shelf here. I'm not going to be comfortable if I can only listen to a couple of bits and pieces of this thing. I want the whole thing. So, Abbey Road, number one. Jumping ahead to 1975, we have Pink Floyd's "Wish You Were Here." I was debating: do I include Pink Floyd? Do I include "Wish You Were Here" or do I include "Dark Side of the Moon"? I think they're both perfect albums. I think this one's a little bit better. Call me crazy. I did not include "The Wall" in my deliberations. I'll explain why in a future video. "Shine On You Crazy Diamond," "Welcome to the Machine," "Have a Cigar," "Wish You Were Here," and "Shine On You Crazy Diamond Part 2. Not a skipper in the bunch. Nothing I can think of that could be done to that album that would make it any better. It is head and shoulders better than everything that was done in 1975, and I want to listen to the whole thing, right? So I'm going to be saying pretty much the same thing for all these albums. Perfect album number 3. We're ahead one more year. It's now 1976, and we saw the release of Boston by Boston. This is probably the roughest quality vinyl that I'm going to be showing you. There might be another that's worse. This thing was a monster when it came out. There's not a bad track on here. I don't want to skip any tracks. I want to listen to the whole thing. Boston is a perfect album. It is so perfect that as far as I'm concerned, this is pretty much all I need for Boston. I've got Don't Look Back there somewhere. And I listen to it every once in a while. I listen to this thing all the time. It's really rough when your first album is this good. Which also happened with Perfect Album number 4, 1977's Bat Out of Hell by Meatloaf. I love this album. I've gone through, this is probably my third copy of this album. I also have it on CD. I had it on cassette. This is my second actual vinyl copy. I love this album. No skippers. I want to listen to the whole thing. You know, Todd Rundgren. Come on, you're not gonna do anything to improve this album. Fantastic album. Coming up next, 1978. Jazz by Queen. I love this album. This is probably my favorite Queen album. One of the things one of the points I made in my Perfect album video is that perfect doesn't necessarily mean favorite, but sometimes they are. I think this is a perfect album, and I think it is also my favorite. Yeah, no skippers. I'm not gonna. I don't think could be anything done to this album that would make it better than it is. Great album, Queen, Jazz. Next, from 1979, The Kinks, Low Budget. I am a big Kinks fan, but I think I'm an unusual, atypical Kinks fan because I tend to like later Kinks rather than earlier Kinks. I like the singles that they had in the 60s and early 70s, but I'm lukewarm on the albums. I've got, Kinda Kinks, and I've got a bunch of those, but I don't listen to them as often. I pick and choose the songs for those. But from Sleepwalker forward, I'm a fan of the albums, and I think Low Budget is, as far as the Kinks albums goes, probably the most consistent in quality across the whole thing. I think. Don't know that it's going to be my favorite if I rank them, and I'm thinking of doing a Kinks ranking video, so I'm not going to think too hard about it right now. Low Budget, Give the People What They Want, State of Confusion, these are all really good albums, and but I think Kinks, of the three, Kinks is the one that's the most likely to be, or the most deserving of being called perfect. Next, got an album from 1980. This one, so far I've been listing albums that I think, okay, any rock fan, any pop rock fan of the 60s and 70s is going to be drifting towards these albums. This is the first one that I think is a little bit unusual. I'm a huge fan of Alice Cooper, and I think Flush the Fashion is a perfect album. I love the picture on the back, too. I think Flush the Fashion is a perfect album. The songs are great. The production is great. I love the sound of it. No skippers. Whole thing, one fell swoop. Quite possibly my favorite Alice Cooper album. Okay, now we're jumping ahead 7 years. 1987 saw the release of an album by one of my favorite songwriters whose albums tend to be uneven. I like them, but there's usually at least one skipper. I quibble with track order, and I think, okay, you probably should have done something. A little tinkering here, a little tinkering there. But I don't have that reaction to Warren Zevon's Sentimental Hygiene. I think Sentimental Hygiene is a perfect album. The songwriting on this is consistently excellent, and it's definitely I sit and listen to in one sitting. I do not take these songs out of context. Love Sentimental Hygiene. Number 9 on my list of 10 here is from 1996. Anybody who knows me well knows that I'm a huge fan of Bare Naked Ladies, and Born on a Pirate Ship is a perfect album. This is the first album that they recorded after Andy Cregan left the group. The songwriting is fantastic. We've got a couple of songs on here by Jim Cregan, who should be encouraged to write more because he writes just wonderful songs. Yeah, Born on a Pirate Ship. Highly recommended. Perfect album. And then finally, okay, so Sentimental Hygiene, that kind of came out of nowhere. Flush the Fashion, where did that come from? I'm willing to bet this is probably going to be the most surprising entry on my list. I first became aware of this band when they were opening for Bare Naked Ladies on their Maroon tour. And I was really impressed with them, so impressed that I went out and bought their album, and I loved it. I loved it enough that I kept buying their albums, and I kept being disappointed in their albums. So I used to say that I was a big fan of Guster, but what I realize now is that I'm a big fan of Lost and Gone Forever. This is an excellent album. The rest of their albums, I'm kind of iffy on. But this thing is, I mean, perfect. Note for note, perfect. The closest I come to a quibble is in the selection of the last song on the album, Rainy Day, which I get what they're going for. It's a big anthemic kind of ballady kind of closer, and I think it works. That's the closest I can come to saying maybe it's not perfect, because I wonder sometimes maybe they should do something else. What they did works really, really well, though, and the strength of the rest of the album makes up for the fact that there's almost something I could do that would improve it. So, those are perfect albums. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Leave a comment below. Do you think that one of these is a piece of garbage? Drop a note down there. I'm happy to talk about it. As long as we're all aware going into it that there's no such thing as objectively right and objectively wrong when it comes to music. I didn't do the subjectivity notice this time. There's only music that we like, music that we do not like. There's no such thing as objectively good art. There is only art. As long as we keep that in mind. The conversation's always fun. If you enjoyed this, please consider liking the video. If you are interested to find out what other albums I think are perfect, or if you're interested in watching me rank other albums by other artists, I think there is probably a Kinks ranking video coming. I know there's a Monkees ranking video coming. There may, in fact, even be a Bare Naked Ladies video coming. So if you're interested in any of that, go ahead and click the subscribe button. And if you click the subscribe button, I'd appreciate it if you'd go ahead and click the notification bell. It makes a difference, I'm sure. Yeah. And thank you very much for tuning in, and I hope that the rest of your day is glorious. See you soon.